Away from the NFL draft, owners meeting this week in Orlando. We could see some rule changes. A lot of topics are being discussed, especially trades and other rumors. Coaches and executives available to the media today.
We're going to have all kinds of things, adversity that we're going to have to overcome throughout the next season, just like we do every other season. So it's how we prepare and how we go about our business. And usually the team's pretty good about it.
Will you actually show them the Philly tape on day one?
No, hell no. I don't want to watch that either.
For me, it's trying to improve your team, put together a good football team. I'm not trying to put together a track team or an Olympic team. Speed's important, so's strength, so's explosion, so's playmaking ability, so's technique, so's everything else. So they're all important.
Okay, he has a cannon. He can really throw a football. I think John said it. He threw a ball that hit a guy in the sternum, and I was like, I mean, you can hear it go boom. I mean, he can really throw the football. And when he does it all right from a biomechanic standpoint, from his body being in line and all that, he's as pretty as I've seen.
Derek Carr.
Come on, man. 7 o'clock in the morning. Derek Carr. I mean, I've been a head coach of the Raiders for 70 days. I haven't met any of my players yet. So I'll just say excitement is the word for Derek Carr. He brings a lot of excitement.
I don't know who's going to make the team, who's going to play, and all that. So I have no idea.
Gotta love Bill Belichick. Senior NFL insider Chris Mortensen joining us now live from the owners' meetings in Orlando. Mort, one of the big topics so far has been Odell Beckham Jr. Giants co-owner Steve Tisch says he'd like the team to keep the star wide receiver. What's the general tone you've been hearing from people around the team?
Listen, in a perfect world, of course the Giants would like to keep Odell Beckham Jr., but Odell Beckham Jr. is not living in that perfect world right now. The issues off the field that even extend to previous seasons, combined with the fact that he has an asking price that we have all reported to be around $20 million. That could always be negotiated down. But then if you think he's not going to participate in anything in the offseason because of that contract situation, that leads to all this point when John Mara, the other co-owner, and probably the name people are most familiar with, comes to the meetings here and says he's tired of talking about Odell. Nobody's untouchable on this team. And then Pat Shurmur, the new head coach of the Giants this morning, said he's part of the team for now. He used that word for now. That was obviously a qualifier. So clearly, if they think Odell Beckham Jr. is not really going to participate in the offseason, if it's going to be an issue going into training camp because they can't get together on a contract because they really don't, they're hesitant to give him that type of money, then being on the trade block is a possibility, even if they're not actively shopping him, and even if Steve Tisch, the other co-owner, believes that in an ideal world, as most people would, you want to keep the guy, but they're not going to keep him at any cost.
Wow, certainly a ripple effect. We'll see what happens moving forward, keeping the division. The Eagles' Howie Roseman reaffirmed yesterday Nick Foles' trade value, saying, quote, that's going to be a high price tag. What's the feeling on Foles' future right now in Philly?
Well, even 6 weeks, 2 months ago, you looked at Carson Wentz is coming off ACL surgery. It's a 9 to 12-month recovery. He's ahead of schedule. So even if he was, maybe best case scenario, he's ready for the season opener. Who's the best insurance policy at backup quarterback in the NFL? The obvious name is Nick Foles. He's a Super Bowl MVP. And they just paid him a $3 million roster bonus, which means he's going to make $7.6 million this year. They don't have a second. The Eagles don't have a second and third round pick. But I was told 2 months ago that basically a team that inquired about Foles got the impression that it was like, hey, we got a first and a fourth round pick for Sam Bradford. That's at least where we start this discussion. And teams are not going to give up a first round pick for Nick Foles.
Let's talk about some rookie quarterbacks. Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen are considered the top 2 QBs in this year's draft class. Yesterday, Rosen's former coach at UCLA, Jim Mora Jr., said he thinks he would be a good fit in New York, while Darnold, of rival USC would be for Cleveland. Here's the quote: because of fit, I would take Sam Darnold if I were the Cleveland Browns. I think he has the blue-collar, gritty attitude. I think his teammates will love him. I think the city will love him. He'll say the right things. He'll come in and represent well. I think he kind of represents what Cleveland is. And then if I was one of the New York teams, I'd take Josh like that. I think they're both going to be great pros. Mort, given that he coached Josh Rosen at UCLA, what's been the reaction to that?
Well, I actually watched the video. I think he was on NFL Network when Jim said what he said, and he responded so quickly. Who would you take if you were Cleveland? And he said Sam Darnold, and it made you kind of sit up. And if you look at the reasons why he said Sam Darnold would fit better in Cleveland, he's talking about gritty, blue-collar town. Listen, all those qualities that he talked about with Sam Darnold, those are qualities that every franchise, including the New York franchises, would value very much. So even though he came back around and said Josh Rosen, they'll both be great quarterbacks, I think that some teams probably are already aware that, and it's one reason why Josh Rosen isn't necessarily being talked about as the first pick in the draft, is that, he's a different caliber guy. The game tape, it's wonderful. And remember, by the way, Josh Rosen basically destroyed USC when Darnold and Rosen went head-to-head. So there's something about Josh Rosen in terms of just the personality and how he will mix in with the rest of the team, being the face of the franchise. And I think that Jim Mora basically described it, a quarterback in Sam Darnold that any franchise would like to have. Very curious remarks. But I think Jim being pretty true to what I think other teams feel about it.
Yeah, Josh Rosen, very outspoken throughout his UCLA career on a variety of topics.
It's not the outspoken part. Doug, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, what is
it's
it?
It's not that. It's behind the scenes. I know you hear teammates say he was a great teammate, but you've also heard that Jim Morris say, "Hey, whoever takes him better challenge him intellectually." You have a guy here who is very smart, who just might think he's the smartest guy in your room, smarter than the coaches, and isn't afraid to necessarily reflect that. And that doesn't play well or wash well. And in the NFL, you're dealing with professionals. You're not dealing with the guys who are 18, 19, 20 years old.
Certainly compelling, considering his former coach is the one who had that most recent comment. We'll see how it all plays out in the draft. That's our Chris Mortensen joining us live from Orlando at the NFL Owners Meetings.